It seems to be all quiet out there, so I will get started. I'm Mel Cashen, one of the educational designers from the Office of the Provost Chancellor of Learning and Teaching. So I'm assuming everyone's here for Turitin. That's what we're going to talk about, even though I've got academic integrity written up there. Turitin is now live. It's available to everyone, and I know that it was a long time coming and something that that our office certainly celebrated when we were able to announce that it's definitely there and accessible, because it was quite a long process going through sort of privacy and different Monash rules around things to get it in. So it is available for your use now. One of the things that we noticed when we started looking at Turnitin was that Turnitin is just the tool. There's so much more that sort of comes into it with academic integrity. So the reason that I'm looking at academic integrity today is give you a little bit of background about that as well. Sort of go through what Turnitin can do, but and also look at the tool. So it's sort of a little bit two-sided. The session that I'm doing today is a little bit of a repeat of the Assessment Matters workshop. I'm not sure if anybody was at the Assessment Matters workshop last year. If so, just bear with me. There'll be some repeats, but if you feel like you've heard all this before, please feel free to wander out and into the other session if you need to. Okay, so academic integrity. These are things that we'll have a look at. What is academic integrity, what's Turnitin and what it isn't, what does it look like in Moodle, and how it can be used meaningfully. So when we look at Monash and their idea of what academic integrity is, because it actually changes a lot depending on who you're talking to and what different people's ideas are. So for Monash, it's ethical, honest, and responsible approach to the things that we do. So that's sort of just a little bit of a background. So the idea of Turnitin being implemented is that we can take an educative response to these areas. Oh, I've got a couple of little cartoons here that sort of give you an idea of some of the thoughts around academic integrity or plagiarism. I do like this one, the idea that academic integrity goes further than just university life. So one of the things that we noticed when we started talking about Turnitin was the idea that people would see it as a plagiarism detector. By using Turnitin, I'll be able to detect students if they're plagiarising. But actually, it's more of a text matching software. It's not able to detect plagiarism. What it can do is give you some information that might help you to decide whether or not plagiarism has occurred. So what it solely does is match text or look for similar text on the internet, in journals, and in different areas. The reason that it can't just detect plagiarism is that some phrases are very common. So when we're looking at software that matches text, some of those phrases might be used several times through a text, and it matches and says, oh, this is a really high number of matches, but it's actually just because they've used a lot of similar words to other people. Some students don't know how to paraphrase, cite, reference, or synthesize. So it sort of brings about that question around what's intent and what's not with plagiarism. Is this something that they have specifically gone out to do, or is this just a byproduct of not having the right skills to be able to write an essay or text? Many students don't actually know, and I don't think that's just for students. I think a lot of people don't realise that structure, images, music, code need to be attributed. And I know, like, the use of images is a perfect example of that, especially when you're looking at taking images from Google, which is so easily accessible now. Coincidences do happen, and I'll actually share in a little while some of the originality reports that come up, and you'll be able to see where some of those coincidences do happen. And finally, when using Turnitin, some of the settings that you choose when you set it up can influence or can affect the percentage of text matching. So Turnitin effectively looks at texts that it has in its database and matches them to the student's paper. The higher text matches that occur, the higher percentage that a student receives in an originality report. And that's the report that you and the student receive about how much text is actually matched. So how can we use Moodle and Turnitin to actually help with academic integrity? Right? Yeah.
One quick question. Does it match text with other students' papers?
It does, yes. Yeah. So we'll go into that as well, and I'll show you how that happens. But using Turnitin not as a tool for a punitive effect, but actually how can we use it to educate our students about academic integrity? So we can do that now with Turnitin. It has a database of over 20 billion web pages, 100 million textbooks, and 220 million student submissions. So it does look at student submissions from your class as well as any other student submissions from around different universities that use Turnitin. You can actually have a little bit of control over what databases are searched when you set it up. So that's something to consider if you do want that to be searching against different databases. So this is what it looks like. It actually sits into Moodle similar to setting up an assignment. So you can see normally you would have gone to assignments. Instead you've got a Turnitin assignment down here. And as you can see, the settings are fairly similar as well. So it does fit into Moodle quite well. I'll actually have a look at a live version and set up an assignment towards the end. So we'll go into a little bit more detail of that. And especially some of the different options that we have that are quite important. So why use Turnitin? It actually can tell students a lot about what they're doing. The originality report, which I've got a file here and I will share out later, has a list of all of the matches that occur. So you can see here this one has 4% similarity, and then it tells you exactly where each of those sources have come from. So there's one here that's come from an internet source, this one's come from a publication, this one's been submitted through another student paper. So you can see those matches. And when you look through the text, it actually comes up with some highlighted sections where it matches. By looking at this and examining it, there's a lot that you can learn about what's been paraphrased well, what areas haven't been referenced or cited correctly, that areas that students might need to go back and rephrase or look at again. So there's a lot that students can learn from it, and hopefully what that does is save you a little bit more time because the quality of writing is improving. So it gives you more time to do whatever you like. Probably a lot of this. So you can see this here is what the students and yourself receive at the end. It tells you that they've put in a submission, the date it was submitted, and then how much similarity there was. So with this one it was 97, so you can see the red there, and saying that that's a warning for you. If it's green, it usually means this is what's acceptable. In saying that, it's a very grey line between what's acceptable and what's not. And one of the things when we look at some of these papers in a little while, you can see that although it might say 15%, that when you look at it, it's just picked up the reference page. So it's not a clear indication that 15% means no, you failed. We can't draw that line. So this is just sort of an indicator for you. It's a warning to say, all right, we need to look at this. We need to see what's we need to look more into it and see what are the factors that's creating that. 97%, I must admit, I would certainly have huge alarm bells for that. But if we're looking at 20% or 25%, there are a lot of factors that could actually create that score. So these are the colours here. Blue means that there's no matching at all, which sends alarm bells in itself, that a student doesn't have any matches at all, so may not be using any references or quoting anything. But one word to 24%, and you can see that it goes up there. So this is the originality report that you view online. So you can see there, this one here is where what's been written in the body of text, and it matches to number 4 over here. Sorry, that's not very clear. With 5% of that text has been used from a different source. So you can see there, this is something that we've taken out of Wikipedia, and it's got the list of, oh actually no it's not, sorry, it's come from a paper there, but we've used something that's already in the database. So it's showing up as these percentages. The highest matches will actually sit at the top and then it goes further down. And you'll find often there's a lot of less than 1%. So even the less than 1% will show up. They're usually references. So one thing to consider is if you see that less than 1%, that it's not a huge match and is probably something that you can ignore. I say probably because every case will be different. Okay, we're going to spend sort of 5 minutes or so just having a look at some of the originality reports, because this is actually the education part. This is what you can look at and your students can look at that can actually help them to identify what they can do with Turnitin and what they can improve in. So I've got quite a few here, and what I want you to think about, and I'll give you sort of 5 minutes to have a look and discuss with the people around you, but have a think about what you can learn as a student, and what do you learn as the person marking this essay? What feedback can you offer to students? So we'll look at these questions and ask them in a minute. So what does the percentage really tell you? What does it tell you as a lecturer? And what would you do differently if you were a student that was doing this essay? So I'll hand some of these around. And if you I'll do some different ones, so if you share them around.
Yeah.
Thank you. So things to look at: the percentage on the back page, and then linking the source to where it is in the actual originality report, and also what those matches look like. Are these big chunks of text, or are they quotes? Are there single words that they're found in a paragraph that match? I'll give you a few minutes to have a look. Please discuss with people around you and swap and share and compare.
But like it says, it should be indented.
Some of the things that you might notice too is where it matches to other universities, so it'll actually tell you the name of the university that it matches that paper to. And it gives you an option as the owner of that assignment to make contact with that university as well. So it doesn't tell you the student's name, but it allows you to make contact with them so you can check those papers. Yeah.
There it has references here to previous students.
It does seem it says like
This makes it pretty straightforward.
and I think that one, when you look at it, and I'll show you when you do the settings, you can decide whether or not the references to be included or not.
Is that
26
it
doesn't seem to be the portion of text. Submitted to Victoria, this one has the other show.
Yeah, yeah.
should have referenced that. Yeah, should have referenced that.
And it is. And this is actually one that we have an example with this one where it's tell it I don't have the answer to it. But I'm just wondering, my assumption was that 25% of that text is actually but I haven't actually checked it out. So yeah.
The matches.
But now, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So if you want to know what we're doing, yeah.
Got another one?
So this is. Then, so yeah.
Oh, okay, so this is one that's very close to another student.
And this is why you can't use that one, because if you've got one student page that what it does is it waits until after the due date. So quite often, like you can set it up so that they can submit various times before the due date, and it won't show student papers in that, it will in the final of the due date. But if you've got one student that comes up at 10% and another student goes up to 6%, because it's not checking all of those databases all at the same time, it's alarm bells for both of those students, not, there's lots of grey area, which makes it difficult.
No, it doesn't have to.
When the students
What's the percentage? What is it?
15% similarities.
The thing about having a first meeting is that they can look at that and say,
Does it always highlight, even reference where they reference it?
But the difficulty is that intent to plagiarise. Like that's the specifically intend to. So it raises the flag of in making those decisions. Yes. Were there any comments or questions after looking at that? I don't know if you had an opportunity to see both. The quotation marks? Yeah, so there is a setting that we'll go through in a moment that actually shows that you can decide whether or not content within quotation marks is included or not. So you can see where, for some of these, and especially if you looked at more than one paper, that the settings that you choose can determine how high or low those the originality report or the similarity report is. One example is you can choose not to use the reference list as part of the text matching. So we put through one essay and it came back at 26%. We put the same essay through with a different setting, not using the bibliography, and it came back at 4%. So you can definitely see how the settings that you choose can determine the score or the percentage that people get. Yeah. Were you able to learn, like if you sort of put your student hat on, were there things in there that you might have picked up from a student's point of view that you hadn't paraphrased well or hadn't had used too much from another text? It was difficult in there. There were a couple in there that had, you could see like single words in a paragraph and there might be 10 single words rather than a block of text. So often those single words shows that you haven't paraphrased well. So, yeah.
The Turitin report highlights to the student that they have an issue, if they do.
Yep.
But it doesn't indicate what they do with that issue.
No, it doesn't. And this is where I guess the originality report can be something useful for you in giving feedback as well. So if you're marking something and you're looking through it, and things that you would identify normally, that you've now got another piece of evidence there to sort of support that and say, well, if you look at your Turitin report, you can see that this paragraph wasn't paraphrased well because it picked up lots of matches. So it's not a silver bullet, unfortunately. So it's not going to do those things for you, but it just highlights some of those things that might not have been highlighted before. Yeah.
In terms of the logistics, I think I heard you saying this gentleman here that you can actually set it so that they can hand in, have a look at their own report, and then change it before they hand in the final.
Yes. Yeah.
So those settings are going.
Yeah, I'll run through the settings quickly for us. One of the other things that I'm not sure if people heard me mention was that at the university, so when it shows another university or another Monash student, so at the end, after the due date, it will check against students in that assignment as well. So you can identify who in the room. But because Turitin has such a huge amount of databases, it can't check all databases at exactly the same time. It would take far too long to be able to get a report back. So just be aware that one student might get 40% similarity to another student. That student only gets 4%, but it doesn't mean that the student with 40% is the one that plagiarised. Like it just tells you that these two papers were similar. So it would require some more further investigation into that.
Just on a separate note, plagiarism's been around a long time. Is it an increasing trend?
Oh, I don't know actually.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
We don't find that plagiarism is increasing. It's just that people tend to be more aware of it. And also with the fact that you can copy and paste something into Google and it comes up and says where it's from. It's kind of easier to detect than way back in the past when you'd have to go back to the original source and go to find where you last read it. So I think to a large extent that's the thing. Also here at Monash, because we have students that are coming from either Asian or African backgrounds where they actually don't understand plagiarism in the same way that we do, we tend to see it in those sorts of cohorts of students, and therefore it looks like there's more, but it's just that they're coming here instead of the university that they've got to.
Mel, has something already been prepared to explain to students what text matching is and how they should use Turnitin?
There are some resources that will be available through the student help topics on Moodle, and there's also some on the staff area. There are some guidelines to give advice to lecturers on different ways that it can be used and things that can sort of support it. And the other great resource that's just been developed from the library is a student module about academic integrity. So it looks at different types of plagiarism, what the causes of those are, and then the skills and thinking that can sort of support that. So I'll share some of those resources at the end. Colin?
From an academic's point of view, I actually got quite excited, much more excited than I thought I would, looking at this particular one, which has 20-something%, I think. No, 15% similarity index, and we were flicking through it. And it actually shows 25 references. Because the setting included stuff that was in quotation marks, it's actually telling me that this student has done a really good job of assembling a whole range of different sources. A quick flick through shows that most of the similarities are actually encased in quotation marks. So the student's done absolutely the right thing.
Yeah.
So it's telling me before I've even started reading that this is potentially an HD assignment. All I need to do is to
That must
see
be
how
my essay then, is it?
It must have been, yeah.
All right, we've just got a few minutes, so I'll quickly show you just how we set it up through Moodle. So we'll add a Turnitin assignment. Oh. Just do that. So we name it as we would normally, add a summary where you put the instructions, etc. You can choose a file upload, or that they can just put text into it, so actually copying the text into it. It's probably best just to leave it as any submission type. It depends, that's solely up to you. You can do assignments in different parts. Sorry, you had a question?
Yes, is there any way for students to put in their cover sheet with these?
You could have the cover sheet there, but just be aware that often it'll connect with other cover sheets. So yeah, but you could set up 2 parts. So first part is the cover sheet, the second part is the essays. Yeah. 2 minutes?
2 minutes. I'll just let people know that if you want to come in and see, you're able to swap in between the sessions. So if you want to come and see the session from eSolutions, that'll be starting in 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, so student originality reports. You can decide whether the student gets the originality report or not. At the moment it's set on yes, in the sense that this is an educative tool, so we would prefer to see the originality reports. The things to sort of look at here are some of the main settings to think about. Whether or not you want the student papers to be stored. So this is whether or not it goes into a repository or not. That means that the student papers will be kept later and checked against following years as well. Now this is what database, so this is internet, journals, and these are probably the main ones here, whether or not to include the bibliography. So if you're including the bibliography, you would expect higher similarity percentages. And there's the quotation marks as well, so whether or not you want to see that. The other one that you can do is small matches. So if you've got a string of words that are less than 3 words, you can actually take them out. So if you're doing something that's got a specific string of words, similar to the one that we looked at earlier, that you can take those out. So that's the other option. Now there are, I know, lots and lots of questions, and there is a lot of unknown. Some of the things that you can help you with it in the Need Help section of Moodle. There are frequently asked questions. There's a list of how-to things to think about. The student academic integrity modules will be soon available on the library website. They've actually been developed. They're just going through the final tweaking stage. And the academic integrity policy and procedures have just recently been rewritten. They have some guidelines, and there's lots of useful information on the policy website to do with that. Okay, thank you very much.